the chairperson and the guiding force behind this great seminar. Dr. Arun Inamdar from Vijaypura, Karnataka. He is a stalwart clinician, dermatologist. Dr. Vikrant Savji from Nagpur. He is also a very senior dermatologist and a past president of IIDVL Maharashtra. Dr. Swapnil Shah from Solapur. Dr. Ajay Deshpande from Pune. Dr. Bhalchandra Ankad, dermoscopist par excellence from Bagat. Dr. Balkrishna Nikam from Karad, great histopathologist as well as a clinician. And to guide you through this tour, I am there from Panvel, Dr. Deepak Kulkarni. Our agenda is something like this. Initially, Dr. Sharat Mutalik will give a comment, followed by Dr. Arun Inamdar's presentation, opening presentation, followed by Dr. Bhalchandra Ankad's presentation on dermoscopy, and there will be a presentation by Dr. Balkrishna Nikam about histopathology, and there will be a long question answer session. All the participants are requested that they can put their questions in the chat box. All are requested, except the faculty, all the participants are requested to keep themselves on the mute mode, and keep their videos also off so that the system doesn't get loaded. And at the end, they'll be summing up. So over to Dr. Arun Inamdar, great clinician. Sir, you can share your screen and start your presentation.
Before that, let me talk a little bit about alopecia areata, a non-infective condition, but it was like we are facing COVID-19. How to treat alopecia areata when we were not knowing anything. Many general physicians still think that this is a fungal infection, and patients land with you with advanced stage, and we keep on trying different medicines. Lately, with the advances in molecular biology, the understanding of etiopathogenesis the haze covered on this etiopathogenesis has been removed by scientists, and somehow we are able to approach the cases of alopecia areata, which is quite depressing, even from children to elderly, and it is disfiguring. It is when you lose a crown from your head and a patchy side, it's very ugly, and a school-going boy or a girl finds it difficult to attend school or even social functions. So lately there are new approaches and new avenues, and there are stalwarts and experts who have tried different remedies successfully. And mind you, everybody at the end of this seminar will ask, are the results permanent? Nothing is permanent except change. But giving a good quality of life with good appearance and good regrowth of hair is quite rewarding and boosting the morale of patients. Over to Professor Imam.
Dr. Inamdar, sir, you can share your screen.
Yeah. Is it okay? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. Right. Good evening to all of you. Well, we are here for a webinar on alopecia areata. But first, let me give my condolence to the sad demise of my good friend, Dr. Uma Shankar. I'll be giving an overview of the disease. All of you know it. but still to start any discussion, we need to go back to the disease per se. It's an autoimmune disease with a genetic basis and environmental triggers. It presents as a non-scarring hair loss ranging from, if there are few circular bald patches, then it is called as alopecia areata, and a complete baldness of the head, we'll call it as alopecia totalis, and the entire body, well, it is alopecia universalis. These are some of the pictures which you see always and many times in our OPDs.
Sir, hello.
A single patch extensive
Sir, वो start हो रहा है मैं
ऊफियासिस and alopecia totalis also. The lifetime risk is about 2% in general population, but in children it's 6% higher than in adults. That means the chunk of the disease would be with children. The early onset of the disease presents a more severe subtype with a higher extent of hair loss. See, there is some new thing in the pathogenesis is the loss of immune privilege and versus the disease activation. In fact, the hair follicle is a complex mini organ, constantly undergoes dynamic cycles of growth and regression throughout the life. But the proper progression of the hair cycle requires homeostatic interplay between the hair follicle and its immune microenvironment. The specific parts of the hair follicle, such as the bulge throughout the hair cycle and the bulb in the anagen phase, maintain relative immune privilege. What happens is when this immune privilege collapses, the inflammatory infiltrate that aggregate around the bulge and the bulb launch an immune attack on the hair follicle, resulting in hair loss or alopecia. This immune privilege is present during anagen, but lost during the catagen and telogen. What is the clinical implication of this immune privilege? The bulb region containing the hair follicle stem cells in the upper region of the hair follicle is spared actually. This is the reason why alopecia areata is not scarring and hair follicles can potentially regrow even years later. Then the clinical features, we know that there will be sudden appearance of isolated, well-demarcated, bald, asymptomatic patches. We also know the classical exclamation mark here. It is characteristic, but not always present. There will be discussion while Dr. Balchandra Anka will be talking on the trichoscopic findings and all. The scalp is the most frequently affected site in more than 90%. There are subtypes which I already discussed. And the regrowing hairs are often white at first and get darker with the time. This supports the hypothesis of melanocyte and anagen associated and autoantigen as a key players in the pathogenesis of alopecia areata. Nails, we know the pitting, which is seen with more widespread and recurring forms of alopecia areata. Then there are few poor prognostic factors like positive family history, nail signs, and epiphysis. There are also other ones like first onset before puberty, atopic dermatitis, long disease duration, loss of extension, and the Down syndrome, and also the HLA haplotypes also. And many times, being an autoimmune disease, we see that there will be association, and the prevalence of autoimmune disease is about 16%. Thyroid disease and vitiligo are the strongest association. Then there are listed other autoimmune conditions also. What are the challenges of management? The focus would be always regrowth and maintenance of the regrowth. This is important. We can see regrowth, but how do you maintain it is an important criteria. That is a challenge rather. Why? Because the high rate of spontaneous remission, that means about 34 to 50% within 1 year, you can see the spontaneous remission. It is quite difficult to attribute successful regrowth to a particular treatment with this disease pattern actually. And these are the various treatment available, traditional treatment which are available with us, that is steroids in various formats. And we have got topical immunotherapies, then anthralin and minoxidil topical, and then various other topical which I'll be discussing, and PUA and ultraviolet therapy and even Alzheimer line. and also immunosuppressive therapies like cyclosporine, methotrexate, and azathioprine. Coming to the steroids, we know that topical, I am telling you most of the quote which I am going to quote would be from the literature. Though we use different molecules or different modalities of the treatment, as far as steroid itself is used. That will be a point of discussion, panel discussion while we take those questions. The topical clobetasol is giving good result in various studies. Then the classical one, a small patch or a single patch or a few patches, always intralesion is the best one. We know the agent, triamcinolone or sulfonamide, how you use it also. Then comes the systemic drugs, whether we use oral mini oral therapy or IV methylprednisolone. These are effective, but have a diverse side effects, and discontinuation of therapy often results in disease relapse. This is an important thing. And still, we can use them because they could be important in the initial phase of treatment or at a low dose in combination with other therapies. Then the contact immunotherapy. We know the two agents, HDB, that is spheric acid diabutyl ester, and DPCP, even anthralin. They induce a contact dermatitis in affected areas and are thought to modulate T cell activities. DPCP, initial hair regrowth, is usually seen after 8 to 12 weeks. That means we have to wait for a longer time. Of course, we'll hear from the experts who are there in the panel, what is their experience also. A retrospective data analysis of 50 patients with alopecia areata treated with DPCP showed more than 50% terminal hair regrowth in about 66% of the cases. Similarly, you can use anthralin, but pure anthralin, I don't know whether it is available in India, but Derobin is one product where anthralin is used, is there, and it adequately treats A, but the literature says that, especially if it is used in conjunction with DPCP, it gives better results. I haven't used, but we'll ask from the experts. One of the question would be how long DPCP therapy should be used. One of the good study which I went through suggested, the author suggested duration of DPCP therapy for about 2 years. He has quoted how much is the response within 6 months, then at 1 year, at 2 years, like that. So his conclusion is a duration of DPCP therapy should be for about 2 years. Then the other topicals, anthralin for children under age of 10 years is a therapeutic option, and tacrolimus shows it is not actually not effective, simply maybe because of the depth of penetration of the ointment. We still use it, but I haven't found any results. Then minoxidil we quite often use. The most of the studies suggest, some interestingly, 3% is the 3% is the strength used, but its effect in A is very controversial, and in fact they suggest not to be used in children at all. Then the phototherapies, we know who are how do they act? Simply through the depletion of Langerhans cells, and the Turban-Puva, which used to be a fashion, not fashion, rather one of the better treatment option available in Puva therapy era, but it is out of fashion now. And the narrowband ultraviolet therapy, not much useful. But the 308 nanometer UV excimer laser is a good option for alopecia areata because it causes immunomodulation as a result of T cell apoptosis and mitochondrial activation induced oxidative phosphorylation. And then we have got PRP, which can affect the hair growth via induction and maintenance of the anagen phase of the growth cycle. And a few of the studies where they have done a randomized double-blind control studies, they saw increase in hair regrowth and decreased hair dystrophy in patients with patchy alopecia areata when compared with the patients who received injections of placebo or even triamcinolone acetonide. Of course, we'll hear from experts like Swapnil and other friends about their experience of PRP. And then you have got methotrexate, which has been used both as monotherapy and as an adjunct to corticosteroid. It has a reasonable effectiveness in patients with severe alopecia areata. Adults appear to be more responsive to methotrexate treatment than pediatric patients. Combination treatment results in higher complete response rate than methotrexate standalone treatment. That means again, it comes to the combination. And then a large proportion of patients had recurrence in the setting of tapering treatment that has to be addressed. complication rates were acceptable and similar between adult and pediatric patients. So we can use. This is an article beautifully written on methotrexate for alopecia areata in a recent JAD 2019 actually. And then the another molecule, cyclosporine, in combination with oral systemic corticosteroid is more effective than in monotherapy. And also they have found superior to betamethasone mini oral pulse therapy in treatment of effectiveness and safety also. And in fact, I am more fond of this molecule in using in resistant ones and also ophiasis. Even in children, we can use the cyclosporine. One of the common side effects that is reversible hypertrichosis, which I have shown you in a picture, but there is regrowth of the hair in the the areas of hair loss also. And then comes the azathioprine. We have stalwarts of using azathioprine panel. They'll be telling more about that. This I have brought this article and the picture from Indian Journal of Dermatology 2019, where they have used weekly azathioprine and betamethasone therapy. Both appear to be effective in treatment of alopecia areata. However, betamethasone causes several side effects. Therefore, weekly azathioprine, VAP they call it, can be used as a better alternative to corticosteroid in alopecia areata. And they have got a beautiful picture series where they found out a good amount of growth of the hair. Coming to lastly about emerging therapies. Okay, we know now JAK inhibitors, oral or topical ruxolitinib. Interferon feedback loop, important in alopecia areata. Topical topical in addition to clinical hair growth, soon to extend the anagen phase. And important is a meta-analysis of efficacy of JAK inhibitors in treating alopecia areata. They have found out whether you give oral JAK inhibitors or topical, the oral would be a better treatment for the as far as the JAK inhibitors are concerned. In the dupilumab, we know it is approved for atopic dermatitis, but whatever result they have seen reversal of alopecia areata in patients with concomitant atopic dermatitis receiving dupilumab treatment still needs to be confirmed. And then even similarly, ustekinumab shown to cause hair regrowth in 3 patients. They are all anecdotal reports in few patients. There are no RCTs. Even in 3 pediatric patients also, they have used ustekinumab and found out the result. And the latest one, even the abatacept, a phase 2 open label clinical trial is going on. And then there are future treatment directions also. They are trying all apremilast, crisaborole, fexofenadone, any new molecule they will try it. Vitamin D, well-known one for everything we try. I don't know, we do not know what exactly is the vitamin D level in Indians, but still we keep doing it, and stem cells as usual. But I just found out apremilast, which is available widely, and all other indication they are trying. The JAD 2017 article says lack of efficacy in severe alopecia areata. But there was an interesting article in International Journal of Trichology 2019. The authors are from Spain. They have used 4 cases successfully treated with apremilast at a dose of 30 milligram twice daily after 5 treatment for psoriasis, and they have shown the beautiful picture. In fact, I took those from their journal. It's surprising to note that there very good regrowth of the hair also is seen. With this, I end my talk on overview of alopecia areata. Of course, there will be a lot of questions and answers to be there for everything which we have discussed. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to share whatever I know or whatever is in the literature for alopecia areata. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arun Inamdar, for such an excellent review of the topic and setting the ball rolling for the further discussion. Now I request Dr. Bhalchandra Ankad from Bagalkot to talk about the dermoscopic findings in alopecia areata. Dr. Ankad, please.
Good evening, everybody. Today I am going to speak on trichoscopy of alopecia areata. Trichoscopy of alopecia areata is the most evidence-based analysis in dermatology. because trichoscopy picks up many of the changes of hair in alopecia areata. Swapnil sir, can you share my video? Swapnil sir,
Hello. Sir, you can
share my
share.
videos.
You can actually okay, just a minute.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Just a minute, sir. Just give me a minute.
So trichoscopy of alopecia areata, it shows many features, galaxy of features like yellow dots, black dots, white dots, and sharp abnormalities like exclamation mark hair, broken hair, and follicular plugs like follicular changes like white dots also can be seen in alopecia
Dr.
areata.
Amkar, you want me to share it?
Yes, sir. You
Yeah,
can
yes, sir.
please share.
I'll share it.
So there are few specific markers and few sensitive markers in alopecia areata, and definitely trichoscopy is going to help to differentiate alopecia areata from other patchy alopecia areata, patchy hair losses affecting the scalp. Thank you, sir. Now I proceed.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, next slide. Next slide. So this is a dermoscope what I use in my clinical practice. Along with this, this is a newly launched Illuco dermoscope handheld, and magnification is up to 10x. And I oftenly use photo finder dermoscope also for the trichoscopic analysis. Next slide. So this is a normal scalp. Please concentrate on red and maroon hairs. So red hairs, it shows Short-vellus hairs, which is depigmented or non-pigmented and thin hair. Whereas maroon hair, it indicates miniaturized hair. So few of the hairs in scalp are miniaturized, and blue hair, it's normal terminal hair with proper pigmentation and uniform diameter. At the background, we can see honeycomb pattern, which is very much normal in Indian skin types. Next slide. So this is a schematic diagram of different hair changes can be seen under trichoscopy. Broken hair, which is present in many of the patchy alopecia areata, whether it is cicatricial or non-cicatricial, it's a midway half-cut hair. And flame hair is seen in trichotillomania. SVH is nothing but short-vellus hair, and M for mace hair, and T for tulip hair, which has got depigmentation in proximal portion and pigmented at the tip only. And E here is exclamation mark here, which is an indicator of alopecia areata, which is most commonly seen on the border of the patch. And longer exclamation mark here is called as tapered hair. And next last one is that is eye hair, which is a prognostic marker. I will discuss in detail in the further slides. Next slide, sir. So these are the different trichoscopic features can be seen in alopecia areata: yellow dots, black dots, white dots, which indicate eccrine and follicular openings, exclamation mark hairs, cordability hair, circle or pigtail hair, and eye hair. Next. So yellow dots are nothing but they appear yellowish in color, and they are polycyclic, oval or irregular in shape, and they are seen most commonly in alopecia areata, but can be seen in androgenetic alopecia areas or androgenetic alopecia also. So they suggest the disease severity. That means they are present in all the stages of alopecia areata, and most commonly seen in the periphery as well as in the center also. And when black dot is present, that is a dystrophic hair. When black dot is present in the center of the yellow dots, it's a sensitive marker of alopecia areata. That means when it is not present, it's not alopecia areata. Next slide, sir. So this is a photo finder image of yellow dots. You can see very good image quality of photo finder with yellow dot. And please remember that yellow dot is very difficult to see, appreciate in our Indian skin. So you have to search for that, and most commonly it appears as a whitish or brownish white in color. But careful observation can fetch you the yellow dots. Next, sir. So this is a black dot image of black dots showing black dots. Just check the uniformity and intensity of black dots. They are very fine and uniformly distributed, and they are not hitting your eyes as in trichotillomania. And they also indicate disease severity, and these are the specific markers. Why this appears as a black dot is when alopecia areata affects the hair shaft, which is cut at the mid way of the shaft length. So it appears as a black dot which is seen on the surface of the scalp. Next, sir. Next, sir. So these are the white dots. White dots are the indicators of presence of follicle, empty follicles. That means they are very much present in non-cicatricial alopecia, where when they are absent, it means that the regrowth is not possible. That is in case of cicatricial alopecia. So two types of hair white dots are there. One is from the eccrine opening, another one is from the follicular opening. So follicular opening is marked here by red arrow. So it's irregular, little bigger in size, shape, and um, equidistant. It's not equidistant, non-uniform placement of white dots. Whereas in eccrine, it's a uniform in size, smaller in size, and equidistance and uniformity is there in white dots of eccrine openings. Next, sir. Next slide.
Yes.
Please concentrate on blue hair. Blue hair is nothing but exclamation mark hair, which has got a tapering of the proximal portion and widening or normal diameter of the hair at the distal end. So it means active disease. So it's basically seen in margin of the alopecia areata patch. And yellow here indicates pigtail hair. Pigtail hair nothing but short vellus hair which is regrowing upon treatment or spontaneously, and that hair is circled inwards and it is attached to the scalp surface. That appears as a pigtail, and it's a very much very good indicator of regrowing hairs. And more number of pigtail hairs are present, it's definitely a diagnosis of alopecia areata. Next, sir. Next. So please concentrate on maroon hair. There are many arrows here. So maroon hair that indicates tapered hair. Tapered hair is nothing but, as discussed earlier, it's a longer exclamation mark hair, and also yellow hair which indicates cordability hair. It's a special hair present only in alopecia areata. Cordability hair is nothing but it has got the ability to cord. Cord means bend like elbow. So when tapered hair is pushed inwards towards the scalp surface, because of weaker proximal portion, it gets kinked at 90 degrees. So you can see a very good image here. Yellow arrows, they are kinking at 90 degrees. So it's called as cordability hair. It's also a specific marker. So when cordability hair is not present, so it's not alopecia areata. Next slide, sir. So concentrate on blue arrows which indicate eye hair. Eye hair is nothing but, I feel it's a modified black dots. Whenever treatment is given for alopecia areata patch, these black dots are which are fractured hair or cadaverized hair. They come up little upon treatment, which are pushed by the regrowing hair. So that regrowing hair is forms the stem of the eyeliner, whereas that black dot forms the proper mark or tip of the eyeliner. So whenever we see eye hairs in alopecia areata or tinea capitis, so it shows that regrowth is happening and our treatment is working. Next slide, sir. So just comparison, this trichotillomania, which also manifests as hairy patchy loss of hair on the scalp, just compare with the black dots of alopecia areata. Here they are very intense, florid, coarse, and non-finer, non-uniform, irregular as compared to alopecia areata. Next, sir. Next slide, sir. So this is again tinea capitis, which also presents at a patchy hair loss. We can see numerous hair shaft changes. Here I have shown C-shaped or comma-shaped hairs, which are broken by the invasion of the fungus, which is only seen in tinea capitis. Although we can see black dots, broken hair, and perifollicular scale, but these comma hairs are very much specific for tinea capitis. Next, sir. Next slide. So different cells we can consider alopecia areata incognito. Alopecia areata incognito, it's a slow process and it can be associated with MPHL. So we can see empty hair yellow dots, short vellus hairs and pigtail hairs. These are the characteristic trichoscopic findings in alopecia areata incognito. Whereas diffuse alopecia areata, which is a sudden onset, just like alopecia areata, and we can see empty yellow dots, short vellus hairs, and dystrophic hairs. Means here dystrophic hair means they are cadaverized hairs, black dots, broken hairs are more common in diffuse alopecia areata, which are less common in alopecia areata incognito. Whereas all of us know that androgenetic alopecia, it shows hair diameter heterogeneity, and tinea capitis shows comma hair, zigzag hair, corkscrew hair, Morse code like hairs, and so many other hair shape changes can be seen, which are very much specific to tinea capitis. And trichotillomania, it shows flame hair, V hair, and measure, which are also again very much definitive and specific markers of trichotillomania. Next, sir. Next slide, sir, please. So in conclusion, trichoscopy shows many changes in alopecia areata, which can also be seen in other conditions with patchy hair loss. Yellow dots are sensitive and black dots are specific marker of alopecia areata, and numerous pigtail hair are specific to alopecia areata. In summation, all the hair changes should be taken into consideration rather than a single trichoscopic pattern to diagnose alopecia areata. And this concludes my talk, and I would like to thank all the members over here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ankad. It was a nice coverage of all the dermoscopic features. And now for the histology, I pass the baton to Dr. Balakrishna, alias Mangesh Nikam. Right? Mangesh, please.
Good evening, all. And am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, yes, yes.
Go ahead.
So, I'll give you a quick overview about the histopathology of alopecia areata. Usually, we rarely need a biopsy in the era of dermoscopy and good clinical examination and various clinical and dermoscopic signs availability with us. We are rarely in a need of biopsy. But there are certain conditions when you get a diagnostic uncertainty or alopecia areata incognito or diffuse alopecia, which is confusing you with androgenic alopecia or telogen nucleum or trichotillomania, and sometimes or rarely tinea capitis. You may need a biopsy. Biopsy of alopecia areata definitely differentiated from the scarring type of alopecia. And nowadays, people are doing biopsy in chronic alopecia areata for knowing the activity of the disease, because some of the enthusiastic new dermatosurgeons are doing hair transplant in chronic non-active alopecia areata. So the biopsy is being done for the prognostic purpose also. So I'll just give you a short overview about the pathophysiology. All of you know, in normal circumstances, most of the hair are in anagen phase, less than 10% in telogen phase, and dystrophic hairs are not normal feature. But the pathognomic feature of alopecia areata is peribulbar or intrabulbar lymphocytic infiltrate, described very commonly as an infiltrate of swarm of bees. This is seen very rarely, but it can be seen in acute stage of the disease, particularly at the age of the patch. However, not all patients present during the early stage or acute stage. So what happens once that infiltrate hit to the bulb of the follicle? There is a rapid progression of the hair follicle from anagen phase to the catagen and telogen phase. This is the event 1. So follicle which go in telogen phase, then it regrow into the anagen phase, but as soon as it enters into the anagen 3rd or 4th phase, the cycle get truncated over there, and it again prematurely terminates to the telogen rather than going to the anagen 5 and 6 phase. So this truncated cycle may continue until the disease activity declines, and that's why you get an continuous bald patch in the center. Second event which occurs after hitting of the infiltrate to the bulb, that's some of the anagen follicle remain in the anagen. However, because of the dystrophic keratinization or atypical keratinization, there is a dystrophic hair shaft formation. As Ankar sir already told about the exclamation hair mark, this is because of the lower part of your follicle undergoes miniaturization and there is a weakening of the hair shaft here. This leads to tapering of the hair shaft. However, hair shaft continues to grow outside. So you get a tapered hair shaft. At the same time, finally, you get an trichorexis nodosa-like fracture here. And finally, this kind of exclamation point here, which is seen along the active margin of the patch, which goes into the telogen and then destined to fall out. So that's how this is the typical exclamation hair mark. Then some of these degenerative changes lead to the localized region of weakness in the hair shaft at the lower portion. However, because of the this follicle remains in an anagen stage, the hair continues to grow outside, and at the emergence of the ostium, it breaks and forms the broken hair. The cowdability sign is again the one of the sign of weakening of the hair shaft. So basically, alopecia areata histopathologically is not uniform disease; it's a dynamic disease. There are different phases of histopathology in alopecia areata, which are graded as acute, subacute, chronic, and recovery stage of the alopecia areata. And histopathology findings are many times very subtle. We need vertical. This is left side is vertical, and sometimes horizontal sectioning also with clinico and dermoscopy correlation to come to the conclusion of come to the final conclusion of the diagnosis of alopecia areata. Advantage you can see here in vertical, this is an horizontal and this is a vertical section. You can barely see 4 to 5 hair follicles here, but you can see multiple hair follicles, pilosebaceous units in the horizontal sectioning to examine and the study. So horizontal sections gives many clues, but first we'll go for the vertical sectioning histopathology. In active phase, all of us know there is a swarm of bee inflammation which is targeted around the hair bulb and typically affects the hair matrix epithelium with vacuolization of the hair matrix epithelium and melanocytic incontinence which occurs in the just below the club hair. Now these anagen hair follicles suddenly turns into the catagen and telogen and they forms the fibrous stelae. So here are the fibrous stelae formation. The fibrous stelae are identified by presence of loose fibrous tissue and multiple abundant capillaries within it. So slowly in a subacute stage, the anagen hair follicles convert into more into the telogen hair follicles and miniaturized hair follicles. So this is a typical formation of the fibrous stelae with some amount of infiltrate lying behind, and this is an anagen hair follicle while this is miniaturized hair follicle. While as you go into late stage, there is a minimal amount of infiltrate seen, but what you see is perifollicular microscopic scarring or fibrosis is seen in particularly a few of the cases when it is quite a late stage, and most of the hairs in hair in stage of telogen, as well as there is a lot of miniaturization of the hair follicle, dilatation of the infundibula with the sebaceous and keratinous material in the infundibulum seen as in yellow dots. Coming to the horizontal sectioning of the alopecia areata skin biopsy, the advantages of horizontal sections, we can know the anagen telogen ratio. The normal is 9:1, which is get reversed into the alopecia areata, almost 1:9. Terminal villus ratio, which is normally 7:1, which reverses to up to 1:1 to 1:5. Total follicular count is almost 30 to 40 hair per 4 mm of biopsy, which reduces almost to 10 to 20 of hair in alopecia areata. Then you can easily recognize the miniaturized as well as villus hair. You can easily see infiltrate, which is peri as well as intrabulbar, particularly when you take a section at the subcutaneous and dermohypodermal junction. Telogen germinal centers are seen at the isthmus and papillodermal level, while perifollicular microscarring can also be noticed in upper sections. So in subacute phase, many of the catagens start appearing. The catagen hair shows typical apoptosis, as well as there is a convoluted, thick hyalinized membrane surrounding to it, while the telogen hair follicles can be recognized by this serrated, brightly red internal root sheath with a typical hair shaft and basaloid cells surrounding to it. So these are the typical appearance of multiple telogen hair follicle and catagen coming out, while this is anagen with you can see the fibrous stele with pigment in it. So multiple fibrous streamers you can see. So this anagen hair is seen with the pigment with the fibrous stele. You can see the loose connective tissue with small capillaries within, while the miniaturized hair above with reduced hair shaft diameter can be recognized here. So as you go to the chronic stage or subacute stage, you can see there is a significant decrease in the anagen-telogen ratio. There is a decrease in the number of the terminal hair and increase in the number of vellus hair. So how do you recognize terminal and vellus hair? The vellus hair, your hair shaft diameter is equal or less than of your thickness of internal root sheath, while in vellus hair, while in terminal hair, the hair shaft diameter is quite large than the thickness of your internal root sheath. So you can easily recognize which one is terminal, which one is vellus. And so you can see multiple vellus hair follicles here. So in a chronic stage, finally, the number of telogen hair continues to increase with time, and they may reach up to 60 to 100%. Only two diseases can show 100% telogen. That is, one is trichotillomania and another is alopecia areata. At the same time, the terminal hair decrease and the vellus hair increase. The ratio can be reversed almost 1:5, rather than 7:1, which is in normal population. So as the hair bulb moves upwards toward the papillary dermis, the inflammatory infiltrate persists, but it remains in the follicular streamer and it reduces in amount. So you may see the fibrosis, which is inconspicuous, although fibrosis of the upper follicle can be detected in approximately 10% of the patients with a history of long-standing alopecia areata. So these are the four criteria to diagnose alopecia areata incognito on histopathology: the preserved number of follicular units, however decreased number of terminal follicles, the dilated infundibular openings, decreased terminal vellus ratio, increased number of telogen structures with presence of at least one telogen germinal unit. So this is the typical germinal unit which is seen in vertical sectioning, and this is seen in horizontal sectioning. It's showing a central keratinized mass which is showing no apoptosis, and it is surrounded by the basaloid cells. It is typically having the irregular morphology, lack of pigment, and absence of apoptosis. Then this is the dilated infundibula, which is filled with sebaceous and keratinous material, and that gives the yellow dot. YD is a yellow dot observed on dermoscopy, and here you can see a fibrous streamer, and this is a typical telogen germinal unit. So these are the signs of chronic alopecia areata. So some of the inactive markers which are suggested by few of the studies: one is perifollicular microscarring, is an indicator of inactivity of the disease. Hairful test negative is seen clinically. However, I will suggest that absence of infiltrate, increased telogen up to 100%, increased vellus hair number can also be the marker of the inactivity of the disease. Horizontal sections are much better than vertical because they are more sensitive to show these above markers. Even the single section can be sufficient, particularly at the dermo-hypodermal junction and subcutaneous area. So to summarize, in biopsies taken from the margins of expanding bald patch or the age, newly affected anagen follicles can be seen with typical peribulbar infiltrate. A large increase in follicles of catagen and telogen phase can be seen in subacute stage of the diseases. Biopsies from the established bald patches or center of the patch show a normal number of hair follicles with decreased number of terminal hair follicles. Follicles below the level of sebaceous gland show miniaturization and have telogen or anagen morphology. Other features also includes pigmentary incontinence concentrated in follicular dermal papilla and degeneration of hair bulb epithelium around the upper pole of the dermal papilla in anagen follicles. So this is the case I just want to share here. I have shared it with the discuss this case with Ankar sir, and this case come as alopecia areata versus telogen effluvium versus androgenic alopecia in a 50 years of female, and the dermoscopy shows multiple black dots, some of the vellus as well as regrowing hair, and prominence of the even you can see the yellow dots also in certain of the cases. Then there is a variability of the diversity of the hair follicle diameters, but the histopathology showed more number of catagen hair follicles, as well as you can see here, or here you can clearly see this is a trapped hair shaft which has undergone degeneration, we call as trichomalacia, and this finding is commonly seen with the trichotillomania. While these are the horizontal sections of the same, which showed increased terminal villus ratio almost 1:5, then anagen telogen ratio reversed to 1:9, extreme miniaturization of the hair follicles. You can see increased number of telogen hair follicles. Then some fibrous streamers are also seen at the hypodermal junction. Significant perifollicular fibroblast was seen. Total number of telogen was more than 69, and two germinal units were also seen at the upper isthmus level. So, however, the pigment casts were seen in almost 6 hair follicles. So we diagnosed this case and trichotillomania overlapped with alopecia areata, just for the interest sake of the histopathology. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Dr. Nikam, you were really explicit in all the histopathological findings. Nothing to discuss now. Good. You can stop the sharing. Yeah, fine. Now we are open for the questions. Now all the panelists are there. Dr. Sharad Mutalik, Dr. Sauji, Dr. Ajay Deshpande, Dr. Swapnil Shah, Dr. Ankad again, Dr. Arun Inamdar, Balakrishna Nikam, all are there, and we are going to fire the questions on them. I have made up some of my own questions which I will be displaying. So, and in addition, on the side, I am getting the chat box where I can get questions from the audience. So, let us start with the fire. So we had a detailed discussion about dermoscopy as well as histopathology in the role of assessing activity and treatment planning. But just a quick question to Dr. Ankad, a very quick question because you already had a detailed presentation, that whether a polarized trichoscopy is enough, whether there was a question from the audience that whether 10x magnification is enough, or you can use non-polarized trichoscope or a dermoscope you will ask the people to buy. You can unmute yourself and answer the question. Dr. Ankad, please.
Yeah, yes, sir. Hello?
Yeah, please answer whether 10x magnification is enough.
Yeah,
Non-polarized.
I will, sir. So trichoscopy is nothing but dermoscopy of scalp and hair disorder, and non-polarized trichoscope or polarized trichoscope, both are very important in case of alopecia areata, because non-polarized mode will show us the features of hair shaft abnormalities, whereas the polarized mode will show the changes in the scalp surface. So yellow dots and all can be very much visible with polarized dermoscope only. And 10x is very much pretty good for visualization of all the changes. Only thing is you need to practice it. And hair shaft abnormalities are very much clearly seen in video dermoscopes, which have got 20x to 400x magnification, but they are very costly. But 10x magnification will do for the practical purposes.
So a 10x magnification will do, but a polarized microscope will be better.
Yes, sir.
And this, I think, Dr. Nikam has covered very well. When you can just say in one sentence for the juniors that when the biopsies indicate, just in one sentence, you can say you have a patient of alopecia areata, and when you will suggest a biopsy and any special instruction to the pathologist.
Commonly, the biopsy is being done for the diagnostic uncertainty only. When they are confused with alopecia areata, particularly with other diseases like androgenic alopecia, when the alopecia areata is typically diffuse, and sometimes non-responding alopecia areata is also being biopsied. But when you biopsy, see to it, you do dermoscopy before biopsy and find out the dermoscopic signs and try to take a biopsy from that area. If you are more confused with the disease, then try to take 2 biopsies, one for the horizontal section, one for the vertical section. That is why my advice.
So that's a very good advice, that do a dermoscopy before and take 2 biopsies, one for horizontal section. Advise the pathologist accordingly. So I'm going straight away to the therapy, because all of our dermatologists are well aware about the diagnosis. We have diagnosed the case, and now there are various treatments which we give. So one of the most commonly used treatments is topical corticosteroids. So may I ask Dr. Inamdar, what is the maximum dose of intralesional steroid we can give at a time, and do you dilute it? Whether what one you use, whether saline or the xylocaine?
Dilution is not necessary when you are using about 12 years of age person. Pain would not matter.
Yeah. Okay. And what is the maximum dose you will give?
Only I will use it for 1 or 2 patches only, not then the question of maximum I don't care.
Yeah.
Can I answer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Um,
Dr. Mutali.
I don't dilute it. I take it in an insulin syringe, and particularly in children, I apply Amla in 90 minutes before, and just give 1 drop each, and it works. So very little quantity is required.
Now, Dr. Mutalik, you can answer the second question, that if you compare between a potent topical steroid and an intralesional steroid, what one you will prefer, and which topical steroid, especially for special areas like face, eyebrows, etc., you will give? Is your comparison between ILS and the potent steroid?
See, if there is a single or 2-3 patches, then only I give topical drops, omeprazole drops, because it is easier to apply. And in a day-to-day busy life, if you tell the patients to apply twice a week or Saturday, Sunday, nobody remembers that. So the best thing is to give intralesional with a drop or 2 of triamcinolone. That is the best, and other days you can use other modalities.
Okay. Dr. Ajay Deshpande, have you found any specific side effects you are worried about in the intralesional steroids? Maybe atrophy or retinal artery embolism? Are you afraid about it? Have you ever seen them? Ajay, you can unmute yourself. I request all the faculty to keep themselves on unmute so that I can ask questions at any time to any of them.
I could not hear the question properly.
Yeah, I just want to ask you what are the side effects of intralesional steroids you are afraid about, and you will take care about them.
Mainly depigmentation is the main side effect. If it is given in a higher dose, and the second side effect is atrophy. If it is given in a higher dose and if it is given little deeper than the required place, these are the main 2 side effects I am worried about. But if you give it properly and in a proper dose, both these side effects can be managed, minimized.
Hello.
Do you have any opinion about the retinal artery embolism which is given in the
No, not retinal artery embolism, but I do use dilute. I mean, I do dilute intralesional steroid for scalp, at least 50% with 10 milligram. I dilute it with half, that is 1 ml or 50% with distilled water. Because on scalp, I always use the diluted one because I've seen atrophy and that delays the recovery phase. Secondly, on scalp, I dilute it 50%, and in eyebrows and other part of the beard area, I may dilute it 3 times, 1:3. But atrophy is there definitely, and we have to be very careful while giving injection for the eyebrows, because the retinal artery complications are reported, though very uncommon. So never force, give the injection with force. I mean,
Yes.
you don't go very deep. Don't force the injection inside.
It's
And
a very important
preferably
advice.
aspirate it.
Very important advice that don't force the injection. Try to be as gentle as possible. And there is another way you can inject is the Dermajet. Dermajet is a way you can reduce the pain and you can seamlessly give for a large area. Has anybody experienced about Dermajet?
The only
I've seen it being used.
Yes.
Sir had that, but was not routinely used.
I have used it.
Yes.
The only,
Swapnil?
yeah, the only problem of Dermajet is there is a lot of drug wastage. That's one, and you are not very sure how much you are giving actually. That's the only problem, and I feel it is equally painful as the intralesional steroids. The only thing, there is no needle, but it is painful. It's not painless what they claim to be. So I initially used it in my practice, but it is lying vacant now. If I want to use it, I'll
This
use
thing is use a hand, then give. And even if you are using instant syringe, don't give it at right angles. Use it at around 30 to 45 degrees. You don't go deep.
Let me share my personal experience that Dermajet I'm using. Yeah, please. Swapnil.
Another way to give triamcinolone acetonide, which is very safe and which is relatively painless, is to do a fractional drug delivery.
Yes.
You have a fractional laser, just use it, create holes, and rub triamcinolone on alopecia areata. It's less effective in keloid, but it is very effective in alopecia areata. So,
How about derma
yeah,
rich derma is like it is okay.
any
But
you
we
can
use a
delivery drug. Yeah, that's true, sir.
Yeah, that means you treat the area with fractional CO2 or derma roller and
Yeah.
then just apply triamcinolone acetonide injection on top. A very good suggestion. Yeah.
And for facial, like eyebrows, alopecia areata, I just don't use steroids. Those work wonderfully well with biometric. Any experience, all other faculties?
Not audible.
Sir, what I mean is for eyebrows, Bimetoprost works better than intralesional steroid. I mean, not better than, but it is a safer option than intralesional steroid for eyebrows. And
Swapnil will come to that. Dr. Nikam, what is your experience about irritants, various kinds of irritants which are used, phenol, anthralin?
Sir, phenol is better. I haven't used much of anthralin because I feel it's messy and giving bad odor. You need to educate a patient a lot, and sometimes come with a bad folliculitis also. But I use phenol, but I use it for not a larger amount of alopecia areata. I restrict it not more than say about 20 to 30% of the scalp area. Asking him to drink a lot of water before doing phenol. Initially, there is a lot of irritation, but within 1-2 minutes, it gets self anesthetized. So, and it peels off and then gives a good amount of regrowth. So, phenol is always better compared to any other anthralin or salicylic acid. Retinoids and salicylic acid that way are weaker irritants. Anthralin, I think Inamda sir will be able to tell better about anthralin.
Inam, please. Inamda sir has brought out an important point that anthralin not only is an irritant but also an immunomodulant. So your comments, please.
Yeah, actually, it is preferred mode of treatment of less than 10-year children. Actually, when alopecia areata, one or two patches are there. But as usual, I do not have any idea of a pure anthralin availability. But there have been whatever is available. Short contact therapy. Usually, I tell them to apply for about 15 minutes. Don't rub it. After 15 minutes, take a wet cloth and wipe it, so that the sharp contact is there and not much of irritant effect will be there. But in case if there is a irritant effect, I will ask them to apply triamcinolone acetonide in the morning, not immediately after wiping, because the very act of the anthralin would go, like immunomodulation, whatever mode it is acting, and it does give good results.
Yeah, that was my second question, that whether it will supplement or negate the action of topical steroids. You have already answered that.
Many times in other cases, for example, if you're using for lichen planus, short contact, you just wipe it and apply the steroid. Immediately, you should not ask them to apply the steroid. Next day morning, if there is irritation is more, definitely a topical steroid could be worth giving.
Right. Thank you, sir. Now, minoxidil, you have already told Dr. Inamdar that in minoxidil should not be used, or it is not very useful, it is controversial. But in Fitzpatrick, at least in pediatric age group, they have advocated the use of minoxidil. So let me ask Dr. Saki, what is your experience about minoxidil? What percentage you use? And formulation?
Minoxidil, I think we use, but it has no. I don't think it is a very effective modalities. I usually try as an adjuvant, where I have tried a lot of steroid and I had to give some holidays for steroid. So there I ask the patient to continue with minoxidil, or once I achieve little growth with short course of steroid, I do ask them to continue minoxidil. But I think as a monotherapy, as a only therapy in alopecia areata, I'm not very happy with minoxidil.
But you would give it as a supplement?
Yes, sometimes. Not every patient, but I do use sometimes.
First,
When if nothing works and I have to maintain it, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Balkrishna is
First, and then
Balkrishna is raising his hand.
Yeah, sir. Can I speak? Hello.
yeah, please.
So I use routinely minoxidil, 2% minoxidil with azelaic acid and salicylic retinoin combination, and I found that it is little bit irritating, but that's what we want actually. And if we use it on the non-facial areas itself, it's relatively safe and quite effective formulation.
Yeah. Dr.
Yes,
Nikam.
I second it, because I also use minoxidil with azelaic acid and tretinoin combination regularly, 2% as well as 5%, even in female, even in children, and it gives additive effect of irritation as well as growth, and it maintains the growth. It maintains the growth which is achieved by other therapies also. So that's why I use.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Dr. Inamdar, please.
Sir, the only problem I faced with 5% minoxidil in children, if we use it, they generally get the facial hypertrichosis.
I agree.
Minoxidil gives hair growth wherever it is not required.
Yeah.
So that is a problem, but still it can be a good adjuvant. And the problem is that the hypertrichosis can happen because of steroids also, because of cyclosporin also. And with these drugs, minoxidil can be additive in the causing this side effect. Dr. Inamdar wanted to add something.
No, I just wanted to ask my the fellow panelists. So, do you think the effect what you got, is it because of the addition of azelaic acid and retinoid, or minoxidil per se, which is difficult to say? Only point which I agree with Balkrishna is maintenance, perseverance of the action can be there with minoxidil. Probably that can. But whatever literature I have gone through, I am just talking as a literature, not a personal views or contradicting every views. How relevant it is to use minoxidil?
I think, sir, I used it in some of plain minoxidil in alopecia areata, not with tretinoin and azelaic acid, and I found it do work. I mean, it's not that it doesn't work. It do work. If the patient doesn't tolerate triple combination, there are a lot of them who comes with a lot of erythema after triple azelaic acid, tretinoin and minoxidil. I change them to minoxidil only, and it do work. I mean, I found it works.
Even one child responded to 2% of minoxidil of total alopecia totalis. However, the growth which is achieved by monotherapy of minoxidil won't persist, and as soon as you stop minoxidil, it has a chance to fall again.
May I ask Dr. Mutalik when you will not use minoxidil? Dr. Mutalik, please.
Light heart really?
I don't use minoxidil below the 5 years or 6 years.
Okay.
Because of the spillage, the possibility of alcohol base. I never use this combination of azelaic or retinoid. Whenever I use it for extensive alopecia areata, multiple patches, and that also after bath in the morning, not at night.
We'll go to the most interesting of the therapies, topical immunotherapy. Topical immunotherapy, doctor has already told that various agents can be used, but main drug which is easily available in India is DPCP or sapropinone or difenoxaparone. He has already mentioned about the principle, but may I ask Dr. Swapnil, can you just tell me the dosage, the method, and frequency?
Sir, somebody's TV or something is going on. Can in the background. There's a lot of background noise actually. Can somebody check?
Faculty
Okay.
to check because others are.
Yeah, muted.
I request all the participants to keep their videos and their microphones on mute. I think they have muted it. The faculty to check.
So, topical immunotherapy with DPCP is very effective in alopecia areata, sir. I used it in a generally when there is more than 30 or 40% scalp involvement, large patches are there. I don't use, or multiple patches are there. I don't use it in an isolated single patch of alopecia areata generally. DPCP is basically an immune modulator. You can say it's a contact immunotherapy, which has a castling effect. Like I think Sauji sir can explain the basic mechanism in a better way. The doses you get a set from Prudence Pharma only, which you have to sensitize the patient with cleaning the head with acetone and then apply a 2% DPCP solution on the scalp. This is basically for the sensitization of the scalp. And once the scalp gets sensitized, which is seen as a mild contact dermatitis or scaling or itching on the scalp, you can start with the course in the next week. And I apply once in a week, increasing concentration of DPCP starting from 0.01%, then 0.5%, then 0.1%, and then 1%. So you just have to go it once a week. Patient in between can develop lot of contact hypersensitivity, like he can have a lot of itching. You treat that in between, and if he has a lot of itching, you just keep control the itching and then reapply. Generally, you see the results between 4th or 5th week in my experience, and you have to keep it on. The paper says that you have to continue it for 2 years, but no patient comes to you if he has full growth for 2 years in 3 to 4 months. So I have a limited experience. I have treated around 8 to 10 patients with success, and the care for doctors and staffs are very important. You have to wear the gloves. At no point of time it should be come in contact with your skin or the staff skin, because then otherwise you will develop a contact sensitivity. Whether it's a first line or last resort, most of the time it will be the first line in those non-respond, those patients who come with more than 50% involvement. That's my answer to it.
Good. Dr. Mutalik, you want to add something? Especially about the care of the staff and the doctors, and whether it will be a first or the last resort?
It is very important for the first or two applications I supervise, or I tell my staff that see one, help one, do one. So like that I train my staff, and you have to be very careful about the not only skin, particularly it is the scalp. So you have to be careful about the eyes, ears, lips, and nose as well.
I think it's a good option. It's a good option where you don't want to use immunosuppressants. Maybe young children, maybe some other condition where you don't want to use immunosuppressant. So it's a good choice. It's definitely a good option.
But the question comes another, you have raised a different topic, that can we combine DPCP with other immunosuppressive drugs? Because we are trying diverse things. One is immunosuppressing, maybe steroids or other immunosuppressants, and DPCP is actually causing immunostimulation. Can they be combined?
No, I think I have not used, but from logic, what I feel, If you use immunosuppressant, the effect of DPCP will be neutralized.
Exactly. Sir,
So
you,
it should not be combined.
you
So,
want
Sunil, how- yes,
Hey,
Dr.
Inamdar.
Duration of
Inamdar.
DPCP. Some clarification.
sir, please.
Yeah, please, sir.
Duration of the DPCP.
Yeah, that's what I told, sir. The original literature mentions that it has to be continued once you have got a good growth. You have to decrease the frequency of application, but like if you are doing it weekly, you increase it slowly to once in 10 days, then once in 15 days, then once in a month. But whatever patient I have treated, what we see that even if after complete regrowth, even if you tell them to come once in a month only, they will not come. That's the problem. I mean, although theory says that it has to be continued for 2 years, but it's not practicable in our settings. What I feel it.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, Ajay, anyway, I wanted to ask you a question about it. Can
Then,
you, what is
just to extend the discussion with Swapnil,
Yes.
once there is a complete regrowth of the hair on the scalp with DPCP, and we are going to ask the patient for follow-up once in a month or so and going to apply again, where will you apply? When there is no patch left over the skin. In that case, if you stop DPCP applying, the afterwards, maybe after 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, they are going to fall down the hair. Now, in that situation, coming to the first question that whether we can use azathioprine or not or any other immunosuppressant, my personal experience is that once you have got a complete hair regrowth and there is no patch left to apply for DPCP, at that particular point of time, you can start using some immunosuppressant like azathioprine, and it works wonder because the hair loss stops within a period of 6 to 8 weeks if there is a relapse, and if by chance the patches appear, that will again subside with the help of azathioprine, and there is no need to reapply again DPCP. That is my personal experience, and for now it has been working very well.
Yes.
I second it. I second it. And not after stopping the DPCP, but after you assess the patient and you have seen almost 70 to 80% of growth, the azathioprine onset of action is very slow. At that
Yes,
time, I switched to him.
Yes, same thing. Actually, I start adding azathioprine at week 6 of DPCP therapy, because by that time DPCP has started working, and from 6 to 12 weeks, because DPCP regime is around 12 weeks. So from 6 to 12 weeks, azathioprine will start working slowly. To show its full immunosuppressive action, it takes around 6 to 8 weeks. So once you stop DPCP, azathioprine has taken over.
Sir, I just have a question for this actually. I mean, if we can discuss this. Now, if you are going to use azathioprine anyway, then why use DPCP? Start on azathioprine on the first day itself.
See, it's a chronic disease and it's
No, sir. Not.
No, I'm asking you a question only.
Yes,
It's a
sir.
chronic recalcitrant disease, and personally feeling monotherapy is not effective in all such chronic recalcitrant diseases. We always combine with something else to minimize the side effects and to have a maximum benefit. That's the only point. That's why I'm telling you, once you start using azathioprine after 6 weeks of DPCP, there is no immunosuppression by that time. Immunosuppression starts after 6 to 8 weeks of starting azathioprine. That's my point.
And as Inamdar sir has pointed out, you can also taper azathioprine to weekly doses, and it is also
Exactly.
effective, so that you are not bothered about the adverse effect.
I
The
personally
advantage would be probably azathioprine takes little time to act. It needs some time. So probably the whatever irritant you use DPCP with some growth of the hair, probably continuation would be better with the azathioprine. There is a logic behind thinking. Okay.
I have already
I
displayed.
guess, one more query, because see what happens, especially in a severe like alopecia totalis and universalis, it's a very chronic disease. It lasts for years, and you can't use any of this immunosuppressant for that long. You can't use azathioprine for 4 years, 5 years, or you can't use steroid for that long. So many times, I mean, not every patient, but some patient with a very chronic course, you do need to rotate give azathioprine for
Yes.
some time, then may
Yes.
try for steroid sometimes, may use topical minoxidil. So there are some patients where you have to go on rotating different therapy.
Yes. I've already displayed all the instructions which Swapnil has already told. And this is an excellent response by DPCP in a patient of Dr. Mutalik. Another patient of the similar kind. All are by DPCP monotherapy.
No, no. Deepak,
Yeah.
this is not DPCP. This child no, next one. This first is first two are DPCP followed by azathioprine, and third child was Bimatoprost and Examer. That is Examer plus Bimatoprost.
Probably. And these are cases. This is a case where there is a serial photographs by Dr. Bharatish Nikam. Dr. Nikam, you want to add something on this?
This case was a very resistant and very chronic case, was having almost alopecia totalis to going to universalis also, and he received actually combination of multiple therapies including cryophenol, azathioprine. He was on azathioprine, and on the aza only he received DPCP therapy, and after 24 weeks he received got a partial improvement. We have given him eyebrow IRS also, intraluminal steroids at eyebrow, and he rest of the
We'll have to go a little quickly because we are running short of time.
Yes, of course.
And is it case by Dr. Swapnil Shah? Swapnil, your comments?
Yeah, he's a young adult. I mean, I have a he's a young adult. He came to me with this much of alopecia areata, and I treated him with a monotherapy of DPCP, nothing else. Once a week DPCP, that's all. And he responded dramatically. He has a complete regrowth. I have images post of these also. He has a complete regrowth. Of course, as usual, he stopped coming to me once he has a complete regrowth. So and he has not reported me back. That means there is no relapse since last 1 or 6 months to 8 months. That's what my assumption. And it's been treated with monotherapy only.
We'll go a little quickly. This is my case of a response. I will not go in details. And Dr. Ajay Deshpande, these are your cases of DPCP.
Just want to show the this is the contact irritant dermatitis to DPCP. Patient has applied a little bit inadvertently. Actually, I advise him to come to clinic every week when he want to apply, but somehow he applied with the help of his mother, and that's how he develops his reaction. It disappears within 15 days without any side effects.
Dr. Mutalik, can you just tell us about Examer Light and how it will be useful? Or
see, Examer Light, everybody knows it is a targeted phototherapy, and it acts on the CD8 lymphocytes, and it's very useful for localized vitiligo and localized alopecia areata. And I don't combine with psoralins. I give Bimatoprost for 5 days, Monday to Friday, and Mometasone on Saturday, Sunday evening, and twice a week exposure with Examer. That is my regime.
but don't you find Bimatoprost to be expensive?
Expensive, again, Inamdar sir will agree. When you want effect, I don't consider about the cost.
Okay. Dr. Ankad, do you believe in topical Puvasol, 8-MOP, TMP?
Personally, I have not used, sir. I have no experience in topical immunotherapy or phototherapy, sir.
Okay. And systemic Puva for patients of alopecia areata?
No, usually I give whatever discussed till now, this betnosol pulse therapy or azathioprine or sometimes cyclosporine. This systemic PO also I have not used, sir.
Okay, thank you. So coming back to Bimatoprost and Latanoprost, Dr. Mutalik, you can continue your discussion. You were on that topic.
You can take another question. I've told my opinion. It is effective. It is effective, and particularly for eyebrows also it is easier to apply. But you need to combine it with phototherapy.
Dr. Inamdar, you have already told about the use of systemic steroids, the mini pulse and the monthly IV pulses. Can you elaborate a little?
In fact, in my practice, if I see the patient is telling that the patch is becoming more active, like in the sense it is increasing in size or appearance of the new lesions, then only I will give oral mini pulse therapy. And even literature suggests that initial phase of alopecia areata, definitely it will stop the progression of the disease. So I use betamethasone twice weekly, 5 milligram Saturday and Sunday. That regimen I use. That is the only regimen which I use for about 3 months and then stop and take the other medications.
But how many cases you must have given IV mini pulse? Sorry, IV pulse.
IV pulse I haven't used it in any patients, but literature says IV methylprednisolone monthly once for 3 months, not used.
Alopecia universalis.
There also I haven't used it. In fact, we thought
Monthly
sometimes
pulse.
DCP like DP like treatment, but we didn't try. By the time we got another method by which we can treat the patient like cyclosporine and the pulse therapy methylprednisolone. That gave a good result. Actually.
But you have an opinion that initially when it is rapidly spreading, it has aggressivity.
Yes, we should use, we can use. There is nothing wrong with that.
And these are the cases of Dr. Sauji, which is treated with betamethasone.
Daily?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I use mostly, I use daily for maximum up to 3 to 4 weeks. And most of the patient do respond, especially the severe one, the rapidly progressing one. And then I discontinued many times, patient you and then try to manage with the topical if it recurs. And if at all require, I do repeat it sometimes, maybe after a few months. So in this case, he is used to respond, but used to recur. So in 16 months, that is 1.5 years, I have repeated it 3 times. So that's not a major serious side effects are not expected. But there are some patients whom you give daily steroid, they respond, but the recurrence is very fast. So in that situation, I do maintain it on pulse. Betamethasone, not 5 milligram, but maybe 2 milligram or maybe 3 milligram. I do maintain, but
So you are using oral mini pulse for maintenance.
yes, that not in every patient because not every patient require it. But I feel daily steroid is better, and you don't have to use it for more than 3 to 4 weeks.
The first question from the second slide is for you, Dr. Sauji. You are azathioprine king.
Yes.
So you can just explain the audience, those who are not using azathioprine for this indication, about how do you use it, how do you monitor it,
See,
like Dr. Inamdar said.
It's no doubt it's an immunological disease, and you need an immunosuppressant to use it. And immunosuppressants are very strong drugs, not to be used as a first-line drug in every patient. I never use it as a first-line drug, even in severe cases. My first preference is a short course, like 3 to 4 weeks of betamethasone. Then maybe I'll try to maintain it with sometime pulse. And if after giving 3-4 such oral pulse, if the patient is still getting recurrence in such chronic recurrent alopecia areata, which is severe, I use immunosuppressor. I use methotrexate, but not very happy. And I started using this azathioprine, and I'm very happy. It's a good drug, and most of the time you don't need to increase the dose. But 1 milligram per kg body weight is an adequate dose. That is 50 milligram in an adult. Because we don't do TPMT routinely, it is not so easily available. So starting dose should not be more than 1 milligram per kg without TPMT. And it
But if you are not doing TPMT, any other monitoring you do?
CBC. So CBC
Okay, how
every
frequently?
week, one, that is 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, and then every month.
Every month. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Inamdar, about methotrexate, you are fond of that drug?
Yeah, I use actually font means I would put it in. Do you answer in other way? Like first, I
Yeah.
use any uphiasis or resistant one chronic, especially in children. I go for cyclosporin. Only
Okay.
in the adults, then I think of methotrexate. This is the differentiation which I do. And cyclosporin, I usually use it for the uphiasis one or a more resistant one, extensive one, and we can use it for almost 4 months continuously also. And once the required growth is there, then weekly twice that can be done. Gradually we have to withdraw. And I
What is
had
the maximum dose you have given?
reversible hypertrichosis, which will go. That is the worry which always the parents would come with, and that can be managed. In safety in children, it's known. Even higher dose is also is okay, and usually you don't find the renal unless known causes of renal pathology is there. And hypertrichosis, I have told you, and usually they go. The only other thing would be the hypertrophy of the gum. If the bad oral hygiene is there, then only they will develop. So that way we have to ask the parents to take care of the oral hygiene also. Methotrexate, well, I use in adults, especially alopecia totalis and all, but not very encouraging result. As you stop it, then there will be sudden this thing. Unless we add, like what I mean to say is, whole immunosuppressive therapy, monotherapy would not work. There has to supplementation of some steroid, at least as the Sauji was telling, at some point of time or in between to maintain. So that has to be weighed, pros and cons of the side effects and the comorbid condition, everything has to be weighed. All these immunosuppressive without steroid or other drug would not be much, they not do any magic of kind. This
How
is my
frequently do creatinine monitoring?
Hello, sir. Creatinine, unless see, there are known things. Every 3 months, one whatever standard this thing is, we do it. It's not a not to be done. It's not a question. We will do it.
These are some cases by Dr. Sauji. This responded
I
to.
can show one picture where I use cyclosporin at the end, or if you just if I can share it. Anyway,
Okay.
after this, time is also not there. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. Just finish it.
So there are a series of cases where the cases were resistant to oral steroids, but later on responded to azathioprine. A very good response in this case.
Again, monotherapy. Vikrant.
Vikrant?
No, I think I usually this first I try steroid. Azathioprine is a slow acting, so most of the time I use first 3 to 4 weeks as steroid and continue azathioprine.
So
So
that
it's
means
both. I
that
mean, steroid with
steroids, you can't say it's a resistant, but you are basically priming the patients with steroids.
And you are using steroid sparing agent to reduce the side
Yeah,
effects.
yeah. But what you're thinking, many times like this patient, he has not responded to oral steroid alone. And when we added azathioprine, he responded. So maybe a additive immunosuppressive effect that helped.
So then why don't you start both the drugs simultaneously from the beginning?
I think they both are a very strong drug, not necessary in every case. I mean, what I would say, don't start azathioprine in every case right from the beginning. Try with other like steroid or anything, which is better. And then if there's no response, you can add azathioprine. That is what my impression.
This is another patient whom he has treated with betamethasone and azathioprine with a good response. Patient also had vitiligo. Has
Yeah,
it
one of the
improved with the same treatment?
Yes.
Yeah, it has.
In fact, this is how I started using azathioprine for alopecia areata. I use it for vitiligo. So this patient had both. So I gave him for vitiligo, and his alopecia areata also improved. So, but vitiligo, other area it improved, but acral area was relatively bad. But that is how I got the idea that it will work for alopecia areata.
Chance recovery hoga.
Yes.
Same improvement again.
Okay.
Other drugs, immunosuppressive drugs like apremilast. Dr. Nikam, this is your case of apremilast.
Yeah, this lady was around 55 years of old, and she was having other comorbidities like ischemic cardiac disease, as well as having diabetes and hypertension. So usually my protocol is starting the patient on pulse therapy along with any other immunosuppressive like azathioprine, methotrexate, or cyclosporine. Even with the cyclosporine, I use steroid pulse therapy because this way you require a less number of dosage of cyclosporine. The paper has been published on this, and less amount of dose of cyclosporine if you use pulse therapy, as well as after stopping of cyclosporine, relapse is uncommon if you use and continue pulse therapy. So in this case, I was not able to use any of the immunosuppressive. So even pulse therapy was not given, and I put her on 10 milligram of apremilast, which is hiked to 30 milligram in a week's time, and in a 2 weeks time, and then she continued 30 milligram for almost 3 to 6 months, and this is the result after around 3 to 4 months. Sorry for these photographs. These photographs are taken by my assistant and sent on WhatsApp.
Okay. But that means azathioprine also holds a good promise in at least some of the cases where other drugs are contraindicated.
Topically, she was using only minoxidil.
Yeah. I think Swapnil, you can talk both. You wanted to add something about apremilast in addition to platelet-rich plasma.
I mean, apremilast, all of us know that if it works wonderfully well. If it doesn't, it will not work at all. So obviously you have to use it when everything fails down or there are contraindication to use other drug. Platelet-rich plasma, I really rarely used in alopecia areata. There are lots of published studies of platelet-rich plasma effective in alopecia areata. I have never used it actually in alopecia areata. Honestly,
Did you use PRP for alopecia areata with success? As faculty have shared their pictures about this, I think rarely used, but anybody has an experience.
So if I'm going to inject, I'll inject intralesional steroid. Why I should inject PRP? I mean,
That's true.
Yes, I was using PRP in one case. After 3 PRP, there was no much result. So I have to mix steroid in PRP and inject it, and she got result.
To be frank, PRP is adjuvant treatment. In any indication, it is an adjuvant treatment.
Dr. Ajay Deshpande, please. Your experience about JAK inhibitors.
Sir, I have got opportunity to use tofacitinib in 2 cases of alopecia totalis. One of the patient was totally alopecia totalis, and the other was alopecia universalis. This is alopecia universalis. He has used many other drugs, including cyclosporine, but she did not respond to the treatment. So I convinced her first about the drug, side effects, investigations, and the cost also. And he later on agreed with that, and he took tofacitinib for around 10 weeks before lockdown happened. After that, I have to discontinue because the commonest side effect of tofacitinib is nasopharyngitis or the upper respiratory tract infection. So after 10 weeks, he has stopped tofacitinib and he is now only using minoxidil. But the second picture, that is post-treatment picture, is after 10 weeks of tofacitinib. It is given in 5 milligram OD dose initially and gradually increased within 2 weeks to 5 milligram BD. One should not go beyond 10 milligram of tofacitinib in a single day because chances of thromboembolic phenomenon are there. Another thing is that we have to monitor only LFTs regularly along with lipid profile. But as this patient was young, lipid profile was not routinely done, only at the baseline. The second patient was of alopecia totalis. He could not send me the photograph because he could not take the tofacitinib after 6 weeks because of lockdown again. But he has definitely shown improvement as far as the eyebrow hairs are concerned. There is a mild eyebrow hair growth seen in that patient also.
Okay. Dr. Inamdar, is there any role of melatonin?
Actually, it has no role actually, in the sense it has been found that it has a role in hair cycle or as a common antioxidant, actually free radical uptaking. That way it is used as a nutraceutical for a hair thing. Actually, it has a more role in the melanization of the gray hairs. In fact, it is being more used or being advocated for gray hairs.
Melatonin as an antioxidant, supportive treatment, and again it is used by people to come over jet lag. So it also induces sleep. So maybe partially it may be relieving the anxiety and stress, which is the stress, anxiety, and stress disease stress cycle. Vicious cycle. That may be some role in breaking this cycle.
Dr. Mutalik, will you do any specific area-wise modifications in your treatment? Do you treat body lesions? And what are the special things you do for eyebrows and eyelashes? Beard and mustache?
For eyebrows and eyelashes, I use Bimetoprost. For beard, mustache, and scalp, same regimen. And for the body, I don't give any local application because it is just not practical.
Yeah. So
They have to
the message is that body lesions can be left untreated.
not like that. You can give systemic treatment, not topical. For body lesions, you can give narrowband UVB also.
Okay. Swapnil, can you tell about the counseling of the patients and parents, because they are extremely anxious. It's a ugly looking disease, the prognosis, the unpredictability. What do you tell about all these points?
So counseling for all the autoimmune diseases are going to be the same. It may be alopecia areata, psoriasis, vitiligo, or anything you treat. The counseling is going to be strained. The prognosis is not known. It is unpredictable. It can self-resolve. There is self-resolution. What we are going to do is to improve the quality of the life of the patient. I mean, with all these medications. If you say you don't require hair, it's an unnecessary thing, you don't treat it. But many of the patients don't feel so. So you have to treat it. About immune suppressive use, you have to warn them about regular follow-ups and regular investigations. And if they are agreeing to that, then only I put them on immune suppressions. Like we have a protocol for follow-ups and investigations. I don't use daily steroids in any of my patients of alopecia areata as such. So if I use steroids, I use generally as a mini pulse therapy. DPCP, I explain them about the chances of contact sensitization, chances of disseminated eczema, chances of bullous reactions. JAK inhibitors is expensive, sir, but then JAK inhibitors, you don't try it as a first line of treatment. That's what I was making, Ajay sir has told that. It is generally used for those patients who failed with every single thing. I mean, you tried every single thing, you take all the treatments. The only problem of JAK inhibitors is it is virtually effective, but you lose the effect once you stop it. Generally all the data on JAK inhibitor says that patients usually relapses after JAK inhibitor. So you have to combine it with something else when you taper JAK inhibitors or when you stop JAK inhibitors. You just don't stop it. You have to explain it to the patient that if you are on JAK inhibitors and if you get a growth, usually they do get a growth. And once they get a growth, we have to substitute JAK inhibitor maybe with azathioprine or Saturday Sunday pulse to try to maintain the growth which has been available. I used Excimer lamp as a first line therapy in almost all of my pediatric alopecia areata patient, and it works wonderfully well. I have almost stopped using intralesional steroids in pediatric age group. I combine them with topical minoxidil and topical steroid with Excimer or Bimetoprost with Excimer, and most of them they do respond to that.
I agree with you. It's a non-invasive treatment.
Yes, sir.
I think in summary, we can say we have to find out how is patient emotionally affected because of the disease, and only if he is highly affected, then only we should try giving immunosuppressive steroids and other strong and expensive drugs. Any comments about anybody from the faculty about wigs, camouflage, micropigmentation? Any experience on this?
Yeah, in a burnt out case of alopecia totalis, like if you have an histopathological diagnosis of burnt out case of alopecia totalis, you tried everything and it is not responded, then that's a good option to give a camouflage either in wigs. I have no experience of micropigmentation, but I generally ask them to wear wigs if they agree to that.
And
I have a good experience of micropigmentation, especially about the eyebrows and mustache in me, and that certainly gives a good confidence to the patient. I will share the photograph. I have the photograph, but right now on the group, I can hand over to Rahul or somebody and they can share it.
And will you, Dr. Mutalik, will you do hair transplantation in the quiescent cases of alopecia areata, the burnt out cases?
I won't because this is an immunological process, so I won't suggest.
Amit Kerure has lot many cases, series of cases of hair transplant in alopecia areata cases, and he presented in I think one conference of.
I think he has got very good results.
Yeah.
But as Dr. Mutalik
So
rightly
the
said,
follow-
that you never know when the immunology process will restart. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I would request Inamdar sir to wind up
Yeah.
because the people are dropping out, or shall we continue?
No, we'll stop it.
We'll stop it.
Enough.
I'll, in a very rapid way, I will show the combination of therapies which people have tried. This is ILS and phenol combination by Dr. Balkrishnan Nikam in a steroid phobic patient. This is my patient where everything was tried from 2013 to 2017. Azathioprine and oral mini pulse. Your own case with DPCP and Excimer. DPCP followed by Excimer. DPCP with azathioprine. Excimer and minoxidil in Ajay Deshpande's case. Excimer with oral mini pulse, my case. And so we have got many other cases like this. And Bimatoprost Excimer by Dr. Ajay Deshpande. Bimatoprost Excimer by Dr. Sharad Mutalik. Yeah. I'll stop sharing the screen and
Request Inamdar sir to sum up what we have seen today and take home message, and then we'll depart.
Well, friends, I hope it was a good session, and I must be thankful to Mr. Rahul Pawan and Mr. Prashant Jain for having this webinar and the moderation of the panel by Dr. Deepak Kulkarni and beautiful presentation of histopathology and even the dermoscopic findings and very good inputs. First time, in fact, after all these 30 years of my experience, I could see all modalities of alopecia areata treatments, therapeutic agents have been used by one or the other panelists here. And it is a wonderful situation to understand the both traditional and non-traditional treatment availabilities. Well, if you see the FDA, there is no approved treatment for anything about alopecia areata. Still, we have to battle it out simply because 30 to 50% remission will be there within 1 year. So any new molecule we have to question. Probably we have to have a understanding of pathogenesis better, and then targeted therapy would be the answer for the future. Good night to all, and thanks for giving us an opportunity to say whatever we had. Good night.
right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you.
bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining. Thank you.